little sister. I promise to keep your memory alive. I will speak your name with love and tell your story with honesty. I will honor you by living with strength, kindness, and courage. Even though I can't call you anymore, I hear your voice. I know that love don't end when life does. It lives in every memory.
A quiet street in Miramar, Florida, just after 5 in the morning. A lime green Lamborghini rolling through a holiday weekend that's supposed to be about fireworks and family cookouts. And then, in a matter of seconds, a bright future is gone. This is the story of Brianna Johnson, a young woman millions knew as DreamDoll Brii, and the questions her death left behind that police still haven't answered. Before we go further, if stories like this matter to you, take a second to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Real True Crime Analysis with notifications on. These cases deserve to be remembered accurately, and honestly, this channel only keeps telling them because people like you keep showing up. Now, let's get into what happened. Brianna Johnson was 21 years old. To her family, she was a daughter, a cousin, a young woman building something for herself. To hundreds of thousands of people online, she was DreamDoll Brii, a rising influencer on TikTok and Instagram known for her lifestyle content and her closeness with her family. But Brianna wasn't just chasing likes. She was a junior at Florida Atlantic University, studying sociology, and she worked at Holy Cross Hospital. She was also stepping into music, and earlier that year, in March 2026, she'd gotten real attention for a track called Bend Over, which took off as a sound on TikTok. Her mother later told reporters that Brianna was, in her words, really blowing up, with shows lined up in Tampa and performances stacking up closer to home. This wasn't someone who got famous overnight and disappeared. This was someone actively building a career, with momentum, with plans, balancing a full-course load, a job at a hospital, and a following that was growing by the week. Think about that for a second. A lot of young people online chase one lane, either school, or work, or content, or music. Brianna was doing all four at once, and by most accounts, she was doing it well. That matters, because it tells you who she was before any of this happened. Not just a headline, not just a name attached to a tragedy. A real person with a full, complicated, promising life in motion. Now, let's talk about the night everything changed. It was the 4th of July weekend, 2026. Brianna was out with two young men, one of them her cousin, Arthur Lee Johnson III, who everyone called AJ. The two of them had grown up close. Family members later said they were raised like siblings, not just cousins who saw each other at holidays, but two people who'd been in each other's lives from the start. Both had graduated together in 2023 from Blanche Ely High School. That kind of closeness matters when you're trying to understand the weight of what happened next, because this wasn't just the loss of an influencer. It was the loss of two young people who'd been side by side their entire lives. That night, the group made their way through a few stops. An Airbnb party at a large home, a nightclub, a gas station. At some point at that gas station, a fight broke out. We don't know for certain who was involved or what it was about, and investigators have never confirmed whether that altercation had anything to do with what happened next. But it's a detail worth holding onto, because timing like that rarely gets included in news reports by accident. When reporters and police mention a fight at a gas station just before a shooting, it's usually because someone, somewhere, thinks it's relevant. Early Sunday morning, around 5:30, the three of them were riding in Brianna's Lamborghini Urus, a lime green SUV that would have turned heads anywhere they went. They were heading west, approaching an intersection near Southwest 27th Court and Sunshine Boulevard. And that's when a white sedan, described by witnesses as a BMW, pulled up alongside the driver's side. Someone inside opened fire. All three people in the car were hit. The Lamborghini didn't stop right away. It drifted through the intersection and crashed into a house nearby. Thankfully, no one inside that home was injured, which, given the force of that impact, is honestly its own small miracle. But inside the SUV, the scene was devastating. Neighbors later said they'd heard the gunshots, but assumed it was fireworks, because, of course, it was the 4th of July weekend. It wasn't until people stepped outside that the reality set in. One neighbor described mistaking the sound entirely, thinking it was just another holiday celebration, until she realized something was very wrong. Police say they responded after multiple ShotSpotter alerts went off in the area. Officers arrived to find the crashed SUV and 3 gunshot victims inside. All 3 were rushed to Memorial Regional Hospital and Miramar Regional Hospital in critical condition. Brianna died from her injuries. AJ was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The 3rd young man in the car was also seriously hurt, shot in the face, and would later need his jaw wired shut. For a moment, it looked like this might be a story about 1 death and 2 survivors. That would change within days. 3 days later, on July 8th, AJ succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. What started as a triple shooting had become a double homicide. 2 young cousins, raised like brother and sister, both gone in the same act of violence. His father spoke to reporters not long after, clearly trying to hold onto some sense of his son's memory in the middle of unimaginable pain. So what do investigators actually know? Miramar Police Chief Delrish Moss described the scene as chaotic and disturbing, and he made a comment that stuck with a lot of people following this case. He said this was no way to wake up on a Sunday morning, and that hearing multiple shots in the early hours is disturbing no matter how you look at it. But then he added something more specific. He said they believed the car itself had been targeted specifically for some reason. Not a random drive-by, not stray gunfire, a deliberate target. That single statement changes the entire framing of this case, doesn't it? Because if the vehicle was targeted, that means someone knew who was in it, or at least knew enough to follow it. It also means, according to Chief Moss, that police did not believe there was a broader danger to the surrounding neighborhood. Whoever did this, according to police, wanted this car specifically. And that leads to the next major question mark in this investigation. Investigators have said they believe the group may have been followed before the shooting happened. Some reporting has described it as being treated less like random gun violence and more like a deliberate, planned attack, almost execution style in how precisely it was carried out. If that's true, it raises a heavy question. Who would want to target Brianna, AJ, or their friend, and why? Was this about Brianna specifically? Was it about AJ? Was it about the 3rd passenger, whose identity has never been publicly released? Or was it about something none of us know yet, something that hasn't made it into any police statement or news report? Here's where I need to be very clear with you. As of the most recent reporting available, no suspect has been arrested. No motive has been officially confirmed. Investigators have said they're working with limited information on who was behind the wheel of that white sedan, despite receiving what's been described as a large volume of tips from the public. Surveillance footage exists. Police have used it to trace the vehicle's path, and they've been reviewing traffic camera footage to try to map out where that car went after the shooting, including checking cameras near major roadways to trace an escape route. But tracing a car is not the same as identifying a shooter, and right now, that gap remains open. Police have also said they're withholding investigative reports and body camera footage from public release, which is standard procedure in an active homicide case, but it does mean the public is working with limited information right now too. Let's talk about that earlier stop at the gas station, because this is where a lot of online discussion tends to focus. A fight broke out there before the group ever reached the intersection where the shooting happened. Was this connected? Logically, it's the kind of detail that jumps out. A physical altercation, followed less than an hour later by a targeted shooting on the same group of people. It's the kind of coincidence that makes you sit up and pay attention. Does that timeline feel like a coincidence to you? Or does it feel like the beginning of the answer? Here's the important distinction, though. Police have never confirmed a direct link between that fight and the shooting. It's a theory. It's a widely discussed one. But it is not an established fact, and we have to treat it that way. True crime cases live or die on that distinction between what's confirmed and what simply feels connected. There's also the question of motive tied to AJ himself. After his death, his father spoke publicly, pushing back hard against rumors that had started circulating online, rumors suggesting his son had some kind of gang affiliation. His father's response was direct. He said he raised those kids and they weren't troublemakers. That's a father defending his son's memory in the middle of unimaginable grief. And it's worth remembering that online speculation, especially in high-profile cases like this, can spiral into narratives that have zero basis in verified fact. Does that mean the rumors are definitely false? We can't say that either. What we can say is that nothing publicly confirms them, and a grieving parent directly disputed them the moment he heard people questioning who his son was. It's worth pausing here to talk about how quickly a case like this can get distorted online. Within hours of Brianna's death, her name was trending, and so was speculation. Some of it respectful, some of it not. There was even confusion online involving a completely different woman also named Brianna Johnson from an unrelated domestic violence case in Jacksonville, which shows you how easily details from separate tragedies can get mixed together in public conversation. That's exactly why cases like this deserve careful, fact-based coverage rather than assumptions dressed up as certainty. So where does that leave us? We have a young woman with a growing career, a cousin she considered a brother, and a night that started at a party and ended in gunfire on a quiet street. We have a police chief who believes the attack was targeted. We have an active investigation that, as of the most recent updates, has not produced an arrest. We have surveillance footage, traffic camera reviews, and a tip line that's reportedly received a significant number of calls, but apparently not the one call that cracks the case wide open. Not yet, anyway. What do you think really happened at that gas station? Do you think the fight and the shooting are connected, or could this be a tragic coincidence of timing? Does it seem unusual to you that police would call this a targeted attack on a specific vehicle, rather than describing it as random violence? Could investigators be missing a connection between the earlier altercation and the shooter's motive, something that hasn't surfaced publicly yet? These are the kinds of questions that keep cases like this in the public eye long after the initial news cycle fades. In the days after her death, the outpouring of support for Brianna's family was significant. A GoFundMe organized by a close family friend, Hope Jones, sought around $45,000 for funeral and memorial expenses, and within just a couple of days had already raised more than $20,000. Donations came in from within the entertainment community, including a contribution from fellow artist Pluto, as well as from her broader fan base, people who'd never met Brianna in person, but felt connected to her through years of watching her online. It's a reminder that behind every headline, behind every case file, there are real people trying to figure out how to bury someone they loved far too soon, and a community trying to process a loss that played out publicly in real time. Her death also rippled through the online creator world in ways that went beyond just her own platforms. Streamers and influencers with far larger followings acknowledged her passing, and at least one had to publicly clarify confusion after fans mistakenly connected her to an unrelated announcement. That's a strange, modern layer to grief in the internet age, where even mourning gets tangled up in algorithms and misunderstandings. So let's bring this together. Brianna Johnson was a young woman with real momentum in her life, building a following, building a music career, working toward a degree, and holding down a job, all at the same time. In the early morning hours of July 5th, 2026, that future was cut short in what police believe was a deliberate, targeted shooting. Her cousin AJ died days later from injuries in that same attack, turning a triple shooting into a double homicide within 72 hours. A third young man survived, though seriously injured. As of now, no arrests have been made, no motive has been confirmed, and the questions surrounding that gas station altercation, the identity of the shooter, and the reason this specific car was targeted all remain unanswered. This is a case that isn't closed, and it may not be for some time. Cases like this often take months, sometimes longer, before an arrest is made, if one comes at all. The tip line stays open. The surveillance footage stays under review. And somewhere out there, someone likely knows exactly what happened that morning on Sunshine Boulevard. Maybe it's someone who was at that gas station. Maybe it's someone who saw the white sedan before it ever caught up to that Lamborghini. Cases like this are rarely solved by police work alone. More often than not, they're solved because someone who's been carrying a piece of the truth finally decides silence isn't worth it anymore. If you have thoughts on what might have happened, Or if you've been following this case yourself, drop a respectful comment below. Cases like this deserve careful attention, not speculation dressed up as fact, and the more eyes stay on it, the more likely it is that someone with real information decides to come forward. If you found this analysis informative, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Real True Crime Analysis, and turn on notifications so you never miss another investigation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.